Chapter 16. The Humanoids Are Coming. When I come home at night, she will be waiting. She'll be the truest doll in all this world. I'd rather have a paper doll to call my own than have a fickle-minded real-life girl. Paper Doll. Words and music by Johnny S. Black, 1942. In the March-April 1979 issue of The Cloven Hoof, the newsletter of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey announced a new phase for his organization: the development, promotion, and manufacture of artificial human companions. To those who were working closely with LaVey, this came as no surprise. Many in his immediate circle had been assisting in the manufacture of his people for years, but a large number of members were baffled, to say the least. What could making robots possibly have to do with practicing Satanism? Over the next few months, LaVey explained in a series of follow-up articles exactly what he had in mind, including methods of construction, and how this new phase tied directly into his vision of the growing satanic movement around the world. Man can be easily fooled. In fact, he has shown every indication that he must be fooled. If he isn't, he demands it. He complains, "It's a Barnum and Bailey world, just as phony as it can be." Yet he won't have it any other way, and seems to survive best under the most artificial conditions. Only when one can fully accept artificiality as a natural and often superior development of intelligent life can one have and hold a powerful magical ability. Anton LaVey believes the manufacturing of humanoids will be the next major consumer industry and an unparalleled answer to a range of human problems, from sexual incompatibility to economic recession and violent crime. LaVey explains, "We find ourselves treading on theologically thin ice when we advocate humanoids. If man creates graven images in wholesale lots, which will produce ecstasies unrivaled by all the religions of the past, and those graven images are in the form of the most perfect physical specimen each human could pray up, and God is supposed to carry the contract on the creation of such images, but man threatens to give him competition, doesn't this bring man a large step closer to being God? The advantages of having an artificial human companion are seemingly endless, and, as LaVey explains them, very compelling. The first and most obvious use would be sexual. Even in our post-Freudian world, masturbation is not the preferred method of sexual release. There is still an unspoken stigma associated with someone who is forced to resort to those methods alone. But when customized humanoids become coveted status symbols, much as a teenage boy would take pride in his custom hot rod, they will make masturbation acceptable at last. With infinite modifications possible in body size, shape, hair color, proportions, musculature, facial features, dress, expressions, smell, voice, taste, the visual and tactile aspects of a humanoid would be exactly what the buyer has always wished for, perfect in every detail. Even those who might be considered less than attractive themselves could design an idealized, willing mate, incorporating his or her own particular fetishistic desires. Single bars, along with the accompanying shallow conversation, insecurities, performing, and frustrating one-night stands, will become obsolete. No need to go looking for Mr. Right when you can create one. For those with less imagination, there would be many models fashioned after desirable movie stars and popular personalities, both living and dead, so anyone could have their idol in bed with them, acting exactly as they wanted them to act, saying what they wanted to hear. There could be only one Elvis Presley, for example, but with the help of advanced technology, there can be thousands of Elvis dolls in the arms of thousands of women across America. Everyone needs fantasies. I have nothing against them. I encourage and create them. My only objection is that most fantasies are passed off as reality these days. Most people don't have the imagination to create their own, so they must believe those manufactured for them. If a person had enough fantasy in his life, fantasies he chose, he wouldn't be victimized by all these impersonal fantasies and fake conspiracies he is expected to believe. A humanoid always looks perfect, never has bad breath or any obnoxious habits that are suffered in human companions purely for reasons of sex or habit. How many people enter into emotionally unsatisfying or intellectually barren relationships just for sexual reasons? Asks LaVey. With an artificial human companion, the sexual aspect would be completely satisfied, and a prospective mate would have to come up with something more enticing than just sex. Programmed to accept measures of beauty as communicated by television, the individual becomes desensitized, unable to experience authentic stimulation he might discover on his own. But with artificial companions in every home, the individual could exercise his own vision. Freed of societal pressure, personal fetishes could run wild, perhaps leading to prurient pleasures that would otherwise never have been explored. LaVey sees this as supremely satanic. It would be a case of pre-programmed human deprogrammed by a non-human. I can afford to be gullible, not in the ways advertisers and modern soothsayers would want me to be. Sexual psychopaths would have the chance to play God with an artificial human companion instead of a real one, perhaps diffusing a volatile situation before it has a chance to build up. Since almost all creative and/or destructive acts results from sublimation of sexual drives, LaVey writes, the humanoid would preclude sublimation, leading to non-sexual but harmful actions. Instead of enslavement of the people, it would enact slavery for the people. It could be the ultimate power trip. Sovereignty over another human being. So far, they can pay a few $100s and command a computer. It has made a lot for electronic slave drivers. An obvious advantage to humanoids is in cutting down the number of unwanted pregnancies. In our overcrowded world, that is a major concern. LaVey, with characteristic disdain, has written, unfortunately, many humans' sole contribution to the world, if it can be considered as such, is the ability to produce another human being. With artificial companions, women can have sex all they want and never fear getting pregnant, and men never need fear that a woman might have fibbed about birth control. LaVey sees no reason to fear that, even with all the advantages he outlines, people would ever become too complacent and satisfied with their humanoids. He maintains that humans have an irrepressible drive to compete for recognition. If everyone is sexually satisfied, obtaining his partner in the image most pleasing to his taste, his only means of recognition must come from his non-sexual accomplishments. Thus, status through achievement in non-sexual pursuits can only occur in a society where sexual conquest has become as obsolete as warfare, both having been discarded as wastes of time and human energy, relative to the dubious bounties of each. It is up to Satanists to realize that artificial human companions are on their way, says LaVey. We must place ourselves ahead of the pack, look beyond the immediate, and see that they are the next satanic evolution of man. Scoffers who tell me, oh, these things will never be accepted, are probably slaves to their TV sets, and would be the first to be affected by the humanoids. When people can stop personally interacting with a two-dimensional screen, turn their sets to the wall, and not be influenced by the images on a cathode tube, then they might honestly say that they will be immune to surrogate stimulation. But I don't think there's any danger of that happening. Many things will have to be adapted when the humanoids come, says LaVey. Advertising now is dependent on everyone being made to feel important. Everybody's a big shot. The pitch for artificial human companions will have to include that aspect, establishing them as real status symbols, much as an expensive car would improve the consumer's image. Other consumer products will take a nosedive because the companions themselves will be more impressive than the humans they would be intended to impress. Prostitutes will be unnecessary, except as an elite class of modern courtesans to service those who desire more than sex and simple companionship. LaVey's absorption with the concept of artificial people is one of a handful of themes which seems to have haunted him from childhood. He had been fascinated by a miniature Chicago housed in the Illinois building at the 1939-40 World's Fair, held on San Francisco's Treasure Island. The model was so true to the map of Chicago that a visitor could ask the attendant to point out a particular address. Factories, business districts, major stores, and holes in the wall. Anton stood for many hours watching the city below him, formulating his own images of the interiors of the buildings and houses seemingly far below him. This obsession led Anton to build a city of his own, on 4x8 plywood sheets, dominating the floor of his bedroom. Using balsa wood, lichen, minutely painted vehicles and buildings, he created his own miniature Gotham. There was a harbor with ships of all sorts, cars, and trucks on the roads, modest homes, rich homes, a ghetto, rolling hills. He experienced his first truly magical exercise, projecting himself into any building or street, his city. By concentrating, he could feel the cold or heat of the place, smell and feel all that surrounded him, peer up at the buildings looming above him, peek into windows, and hear the low chatter of people talking within. Many years later, after Anton moved into the Black House and was holding regular seminars, he had occasion to see exactly how far an artificial person could replace a real one. The lecture was on literary interpretations of human sacrifice, complete with demonstration. One of the female members of the Magic Circle had volunteered to assist. The attractive young girl lay on the altar stones, partially covered with a white sheet. Anton lifted a knife high above his head and plunged it deep into the girl's chest. The audience gasped as the white sheet was stained with spurting blood. What the horrified onlookers didn't know was that Anton had just performed one of the most effective techniques of professional conjurers or spiritualists. The girl was substituted with a modified mannequin that Anton had been working on for days ahead of time. Anton altered the showroom dummy until it looked like the volunteer herself, enough like her to convince people attending the lecture that no switch had taken place. A bag filled with fake blood was concealed under the sheet, which Anton burst with the point of the knife. Similar effects were demonstrated in his lecture on psychic surgery, in which Anton removed diseased organs from a volunteer, with healing instantly facilitated. In Daryl Fritsky's The Trick Brain, he categorizes applications of substitution used by stage magicians. It's something the American public will have to be taught. Instead of considering the substitute to be of inferior quality, as with all the commercial propaganda urging us to accept no substitutes, there will be a re-education to emphasize the attitude that the substitute is often better than what is being substituted. Dr. Cecil Nixon tried to interest Anton in the construction of a new violin-playing automaton named Galatea, patterned after Isis, who played the zither. Instead of reclining like Isis, Galatea would stand as she played. Anton worked with Dr. Nixon on ISIS, learning various techniques of construction and animation. Anton has been quoted as saying Dr. Nixon spent a quarter of a lifetime building a woman who could not be laid. It wasn't until the 60s that Anton began in earnest to construct realistic human substitutes, testing raw materials for satisfactory look and feel, tensile strength, plasticity, and articulation. Sometimes starting with mannequin figures and modifying them far beyond their intended use. He would cut off their faces in his workshop, then build new ones using plaster, fiberglass, and various plastics. Recruiting some of his students and staff members as models, he used plaster or latex to take casts of their faces as a basic mold for subsequent modification. Anton wrote about his humanoid experimentation in The Cloven Hoof, including popular mechanic-style suggestions on materials and methods. If one's need for a humanoid was purely visual, it was possible to create a satisfying model using plastic resins and fiberglass, applying appropriate dyes for the flesh tones, finishing off the creation with suitable clothing, makeup, and wig. More tactically oriented Satanists were advised to put together some sort of skeletal structure using dowels, metal, or plastic tubing, fitted with ball and socket joints, and covered, perhaps, with polyurethane foam for the feeling of human flesh. Anton suggested the use of either vinyl or rubber sheeting, or dyed and stretched fabric, for the best authentic feeling of skin. Faces could be cast from real people or from a clay model, using conventional moulage techniques. The resulting latex mask could be laced over a faceless skull structure with a wig to cap the top. Faces could then be easily substituted, depending on the desired effect. Making the artificial human companion anatomically complete would be the easiest part. Artificial sexual apparatus could be purchased at any sex shop. It is painstaking work. Those who venture into this avenue of satanic practice face the dubious pleasure of bending over curious sections of polyurethane, inhaling the vapors and catalysts and resins, and sawing, grinding, and finishing body parts in clouds of fiberglass or plaster dust. LaVey has spent untold hours experimenting with these various materials, and despite heavy-duty blowers and respirators, suffered the consequences of breathing the dangerous substances deeply into his lungs. An interesting sidelight to LaVey's humanoid creations is that many human replicas of his people have suddenly appeared, Pygmalion-like, sometime after LaVey had already constructed his creation. Instead of modeling the humanoid after a person, the person seems to have been modeled after the humanoid. Anton doesn't try to explain these conjurings beyond referring to a method he uses in magical rituals, which he terms cosmic superimposition, a phrase borrowed from Wilhelm Reich. Few have been privileged to see the bizarre showcase of Anton's work. A room reached by a dizzying descent down a ladder is bathed in grayish amber, light reflecting off the mirrored walls and ceiling, looking for all the world like a roadside bar in the 40s. A neon sign flashes, "The Den of Iniquity." The authentic Rockola jukebox plays "Prisoner of Love" and "Detour, There's a Muddy Road Ahead." A pyroline drum set and old Hammond organ sit unattended on the opposite side of the room. Behind the wet bar, rows of bottles wink below the bowling trophies. Acrid, beery, smoky bar smells affront your senses. Everything is just as it should be. Even the people, all LaVey's creations, reflect the dress and spirit of the war years. A saucy brunette named Bonita makes time with a cab driver, gesturing rudely at another woman who watches prudishly from the end of the bar. Sylvia, a besotted lush, stares blankly at her glass as if she's forgotten something important she was supposed to remember. Her cigarette glows endlessly without burning down. With eyes half closed, Gwen listens to the music, slumping drunkenly against the sailor behind her. Alphonse, the ever-attentive bartender, tries to ignore the fact that Gwen is almost slipping off the bar stool, her dress hiked up around her waist, thighs bulging over her stocking tops, and urine pooled on the floor beneath her. At a lonely table in the corner, a sad-eyed blonde watches the entrance, waiting for someone who will never come. Sylvester, an impudent-looking boy in a Cub Scout cap, stands inside the foyer lasciviously, watching the whole scene, while his mother slouches in a chair, her bag of groceries at her feet, apparently overcome by the spirit of the place. All these, among others, people LaVey's private world. Anton LaVey includes a spot for himself in this sordid tableau, among his more stationary creations. The argon and neon lights from beneath the Hammond keyboards, blue and orange, shine softly on his face as he sets a festive mood with a chorus of zippity-doo-dah. The instrument is the same one that bounced over many country roads with him when he played the carnival circuit. As with any artist, LaVey loves to watch people's reactions to his creations. I've actually seen people become nauseated when they get down here. They either love it or hate it. Nothing in between. Flecks of light from a rotating ball play slowly around the room, and as the magic of the room becomes palpable, it is all too easy for the mind to play tricks. The music, lights, and endless reflections blend diabolically to disorient the unwary visitor, adding movements and fleeting expressions to LaVey's figures. One gets the uneasy feeling one has interrupted an ongoing party. Not only has LaVey created his people, he's created a total environment that is a savage triumph of evocation. By the early 70s, when word had leaked out about the super-realism of LaVey's unusual figures, he was contacted by Corey Galleries in San Francisco, who requested he exhibit his people with them. Despite Diane's and others' urging, LaVey stubbornly refused. He maintained that he had constructed his people as experiments for magical purposes only, not as public displays. It was clear that some viewers found his figures extremely offensive, and any additional publicity would throw more of a spotlight on him at a time when he was trying to keep as low a profile as possible. Dwayne Hansen, George Siegel, John DeAndrea, and others have subsequently come on the scene with similarly realistic figures and drawing public acceptability and critical acclaim. Anton has kept in contact with humanoid makers from Japan and England, among other countries around the world. After communicating with leaders in the field of robotics, androids, and artificial intelligence, Anton has discovered that, much as he suspected, the most significant work must still be clouded and obscured. The people creating humanoids now have to hide their ideas behind techno-speak and gobbledygook, or people won't be impressed with their work. As has been true of many great discoveries in the past, the real secrets are too simple. They can't be told. Besides resistance to artificial human companions on religious grounds, there is an innate dislike, almost fear, that LaVey describes when people are confronted with human reproductions that are too close to the real thing. Jacques Vallée, a close personal friend and associate of LaVey's, noted this phenomenon and described it in his book, The Network Revolution. Several Hollywood productions of the 1970s have showed automata used as personal companions, and Satanist Anton LaVey has suggested that the commercial development of such alternative beings was unavoidable. Yet, the same experts who rave about the powerful capabilities of their software creations are scared of their machines looking human. They cringe at the suggestion that the computer's ability to speak, compose poems, compute, and even play music could be embodied in anything more elegant than a steel cabinet with plastic buttons, set on four casters and firmly held in place by thick black cables. This reluctance is understandable. It is the reaction of the monkey looking at himself in the mirror. It is the shudder that seizes any beings when he recognizes his own self or part of it in the world of the others. Regardless of these native fears, LaVey feels the construction of humanoids will be a logical progression from the first anatomically correct Betsy Wetsy dolls and Chatty Cathys to more advanced talking/moving dolls. Incorporating convincing microchip technology, substitute pets, for example, have been programmed to come or speak on command, but have the advantages of being cleaner and quieter than real pets. The Teddy Ruxpin-type dolls who tell stories, mouths apparently forming the words, bodies and eyes moving with friendly expressions, are based on the animation techniques developed at Disney Studios. Walt Disney certainly had the right idea for the realistic presentation of humanoids. Children appreciate that. They've been prepared for human substitutes for a long time, says LaVey. Even the more recent Cabbage Patch doll phenomenon can be seen as evidence of the growing dependency on artificial companions. Millions of adults paid exorbitant prices for substitute babies that didn't talk or move, but had assigned names, birth certificates, and identities. Now the process of softening up has extended from dolls into movies, books, even television series about humanoids. Whether we recognize them or not, the humanoids seem to be seeping into our culture. LaVey's darkest reasons behind artificial human companions are evidence of his misanthropy. Most people have become little more than fixtures, spectators, and can be easily replaced with humanoids, says LaVey, speaking from the ultimate satanic viewpoint. Some people find the thought of artificial companions quite threatening. Those who are most opposed to humanoids are the ones who secretly fear themselves to be of similar substance, importance, or potential. If they are that lackluster, that unstimulating, that they could so easily be replaced by a machine, then so be it. They should be replaced.